And Darktide is very different from when it first came out, and with the new class coming in about 20 minutes, I figure a lot of people are going to be coming back to Darktide or showing up for the first time. First things first, and this is very important, it is not Arbites. It's pronounced Arbites. I know Games Workshop says it's
Arbites,
but they're British, and just wrong. That's not how Latin pronunciation works. I'm going to be going over a bunch of topics in this video, and so I'll separate them all by chapters to make it easier to jump around to whatever you need, or to make it easier to send to a friend. First thing I'll be going through, as it seems pretty natural, is a class overview. At time of writing, the Arbites isn't exactly out yet, so I can't comment on them, but conveniently there's probably already 77 day 1 build guides for people who have no idea what they're talking about. Each class has individual and pretty enormous skill trees, and experimenting with that and finding out what you like as you level up is a huge part of the game, so I'm not going to lay out a build for you or anything. Those exist out there if you want them, but I think you should work it out for yourself. Each class is meant to have 3 themed paths with, in order, 3 grenades, called the blitzes because Psyker is special, 3 auras, 3 abilities, and 3 keystones, though Ogryns are out of order and they get abilities before their auras for some reason.
Stand together! Fight together! Stand up and fight! Or answer to me! For the God! The God never surrenders!
Veteran is a good starting point because he's the stock standard dude guy class and can be pivoted in pretty much whatever direction that you want, as long as that direction is voice of command. His paths are intended to be guy who shoots things, leader, and infiltrator, but the middle path is so good that everyone uses it. Turns out that having 4 people give each other orders is an effective command structure. I'll be going through things in order first, starting with grenades. Veterans crack grenades stick to enemies with some very jank magnetization and can completely delete bosses. They're really good choices when you're not super comfortable dealing with armor yet. Their frag grenades are... they're frag grenades, you get what's on the tin. And their smoke grenades are completely useless if you throw them at the enemy. If you throw them instead at your own feet, you and your buddies can peer out of the smoke and can't get shot back, which makes them actually surprisingly helpful. The vet's auras are a little deceptive, I think, because while Survivalist looks pretty good, in truth you usually have just enough ammo that you will never truly run out. The AI director is a kind fellow and will bless you with plenty of ammo as you start to run dry. It's a bit counterintuitive, but if you have 4 people who need lots of ammo, it means that you'll end up with way more ammo than you would otherwise. So I would actually recommend looking towards the other 2 auras. 5% move speed doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, it is noticeable, especially when combined with the other node for another 5%, which stacks additively. A veteran's abilities are really useless stealth, an okay Widowmaker ult, and quite possibly the best ability in the entire game. On a 30-second cooldown, Voice of Command knocks all enemies away, completely refills your toughness, essentially your temp HP you are, and gives free toughness, that can go over the max, to allies and to yourself. It is extremely broken, and should probably be nerfed, frankly. Quick warning, don't get this upgrade that makes it res allies. It sounds good on paper, but in practice you can pop Voice and then just get them up anyway. The stagger from Voice means that you're almost certainly going to be able to get the res off before anyone can stop you, and increasing the cooldown so dramatically for this buff is not at all worth it, especially because you also have to give up the other perk that you could have without this. Lastly to cover are the Veteran's Keystones, which are unique in my opinion in that the Keystones aren't the real prize. It's the perks that lead up to the Keystones. The buffs the perks in these sections gives is really significant, and the Keystones themselves are a little underwhelming. Marksman's Focus wants you to stand still, which is not happening in this game, just at all. Weapon Specialist is fun with a shotgun, kinda makes you feel like you're dual wielding when you're switching weapons so often. And lastly, Focus Target is really good. I'm not sure what it is about Warhammer that makes them write rules in the most confusing to read way possible, but what this text dump actually means is that when you ping an enemy, they take up to 20% more damage, or up to 32% with this extra talent. I don't think I should have to tell you, but 20 to 32% more extra damage is really, really significant. Focus Target is a keystone that I find incredibly enjoyable. It actually incentivizes teamwork in a unique way, and fits with the leader fantasy really well. It's also a good way to teach people how to actually ping enemies. Seriously, do that more often. If you get trapped, ping the guy. I also want to warn you about Marksman's Focus. I ran it to test it for this video, and it made the game play like a turret section. Only use if you have the capability to withstand Call of Duty shooter set pieces. Evidently, I do not. Pew 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 pew. This is so
I got fucking-
engaging.
Cass, I'm downed by you. Cass, I'm down next to
I'm
you. Cass, you're getting
shooting
hit by
it.
that. Cass.
I'm having so much fun! Equipment-wise, Veteran has the largest selection of weapons out of all of the classes. Zealot, Psyker, and probably the Arbites pretty much get a selection of Veteran weapons and like one unique extra one per class. Just like the tabletop, the default lasgun is borderline unusably bad, and you can blow yourself up with the plasma gun. Don't fail your hazardous rolls, lads. Veteran and Zealot also share the double-barrel shotgun, which is an incredibly fun weapon that feels practically impossible to run out of ammo with. What the fuck? Be careful not to run the Survivalist aura with it though, as it has less than 100 rounds. Survivalist 1% is under 1 ammo, and so it will never proc. For Veteran, and I suppose the other classes too, use these weapons if you want to shoot a lot of bullets, and use these weapons instead if you want to shoot precisely. Veteran's melee weapons are fine, but I feel like there's pretty much a definitive answer to which one you should actually use. Let me know which one you use. I want to see if I've been using the wrong one all this time. Zealot isn't all too dissimilar from Veteran, largely the same weapon list with some new melee weapons, though bizarrely they have a similarly overpowered ability that shares a shocking amount with Voice of Command. It staggers enemies and gives all of their allies toughness, which is so good that it beats out every other ability option. Pretty sure you could have 4 people walking around with this, chaining them pretty much indefinitely. Zealot has the least competitive selection of grenades in the whole game. There's a useless stun grenade, remarkably bad throwing knives, and then good fire. It doesn't hurt you or allies, but it looks so similar to enemy fire that it gives me flashbacks to the debates on if caustic gas should look different for teammates. If the fire is very red, noticeably hard to see through, and it has steam over it, it is bad fire. If it has more black splotches on the floor and no heat haze, it's good fire. This is kind of hard to distinguish when you're in the middle of a spat, so if you're playing Zealot, you should probably say when you're throwing good fire. A throwing and then standing in a flame grenade is pretty much the best way to make a sudden pack of hounds completely irrelevant. Zealot's auras are funny because one of them is good, another is excellent and gives a unique boon that no one else can provide, and the last one is actively throwing the game. Don't take this one. Zealot's abilities are the same story, actually. There's okay, amazing, and actively harmful. The charge feels like a beta version of Ogryn's charge and is extremely janky, and for that alone I'd only ever use the Voice of Command 2. All 3 of Zealot's keystones are pretty good, but the class in general could probably use a touch-up as its talent tree is extremely sparse relative to the other 3 classes. Maybe Arbites 2? Once again, not out yet, can't say. Actually, since I wrote and edited this, Fat Shark released the Arbites talent tree ahead of time, and you can go look at all of it on Games Lantern. I still don't think I should comment on the Arbites without any first-hand experience, though. They also gave some early access release to different creators, but not to me, because I refuse to call them the Arbites. As for the Zealot's equipment, they have a couple unique melee weapons, including my favorite in the game, the Relic Blade. It has a heat meter, which when you activate it makes it feel like a real power sword, not like the really annoying ones that are actually in the game. Managing the heat on the Relic Blade is actually a lot of fun. I would highly recommend this one. I pretty much just play Zealot to use this weapon. Zealot also has the Thunder Hammer, which is funny. Zealot's only unique ranged weapon is their flamethrower, which is so bad that it feels like a joke weapon. The section on Ogryn is going to be a little different from the others. The reason that I did Veteran and Zealot first is to give you a baseline for what the classes are usually like. Ogryn is very different from them in that he is blatantly overpowered as all hell. He's balanced like you can only have one of them per group, except there aren't class limits, you can have as many of them as you want. Their weapons are incredible, they have twice the HP of everyone else, they knock people over when dodging, and all 3 of their paths are totally viable and all of them are good. They are almost objectively stronger than the rest, and I mean, it's kind of inevitable, I guess? Like, you look at a guardsman, and then you look at Ogryn. How do you make those equal options? You don't, and maybe that's okay? Sometimes I don't want to fight like my life depends on it, getting one shot by any attacks that happen to make it through, and instead, I just want to hit things and laugh. Ogryn is the class for people that like winning, and to prove this, my Ogryn has yet to actually die of, like, losing HP in a single mission. He has only ever died from disablers or of the environment. And that's not a brag about how good I am, swapping back over to another class and it feels like I'm in the middle of a war zone and might suddenly die at any time, but with Ogryn I just spam the left mouse button and am invincible. The main culprits are these two nodes that give toughness on melee hits, and the blessing that is entirely unique to Ogryn's melees which gives toughness when you melee people over and over again, called a chained hit. Needless to say, you are going to be doing a lot of chained hits. I've been playing with this for a while now and I knew it was ridiculous, but actually went and stress tested it real quick for this video. Playing on max difficulty, my Ogryn was regenning 72 toughness per hit by himself, which is just about what Psyker's entire toughness bar starts out as. With every hit, my Ogryn, conjures an entire Psyker's worth of energy. The Emperor would be envious. With teammates, it would be even higher. Even when you get hit by an attack that devastates your entire toughness bar, it ends up just making your health bar look like the New York Stock Exchange as it fluctuates up and down. Admittedly, this is actually entirely lore accurate. And Ogryn is about as, if not stronger, than Games Workshop's favorite children, the Space Marines. According to Tabletop, it's not a little difference either, and Ogryn is a Space Marine and a half. So, in Darktide, when you're waltzing around as a 9-foot-tall bulldozer person, it's perhaps unsurprising that you're more powerful than a dude with a gun, or a person that can read scripture. I genuinely think that a level 4 Ogryn with these perks is probably about as, if not more strong than my Zealot. As you're invincible, for your own enjoyment, I think it's best to view each mission not as a quest to get to the end, but a quest to keep your friends alive. You can completely sidestep every coherency mechanic, but it's more fun to go out of your way to ensure that the smalls live. Whether it be with a pickaxe or with a gun, stay with your team, tank the damage they can't take, and don't let anyone hurt your friends. Psyker is also a class that you can select. When Darktide first released, the item system was apocalyptically bad, and designed in pretty much the worst possible way. It's gone through a total overhaul since then, and is thankfully not complete misery to work with anymore. First, and most importantly to understand, weapons have different marks. Lots typically have 3 variants, like the cleaver for example. The different marks change how the weapon functions, and you can see here exactly what is changing by inspecting the weapon and looking at all the attack chains which are listed here, or you can just go into the Psychanium and hit some dudes. Generally, melee weapons tend to have 3 variants, one with wide swings, one focused on single target hits, and a wildcard variant. Ranged weapons tend to be more varied and all over the place, but they all intrinsically change how the weapon works in ways that you just kinda gotta experience firsthand, as the stats don't really tell you. Some fire faster than others, some handle better, some are less accurate or have more ammo, you get the picture. You can change any weapon between any of its marks at any time with no cost. You tend to find one that you like and stick to it, at least in my experience. Weapons have 2 ways that they scale. There's the gear score value, and much more importantly, their rank. Gray, green, blue, purple, orange, you've played a Ubisoft game before, this isn't exactly breaking new ground. With each new color, they get a new blessing or minor perk with each rank increase. You can change the blessing to whatever you want through the Tech Priest, the only requirement is that you have the blessing unlocked first. Blessings are unlocked through the Mastery system, which in short is a cycle of using a weapon, getting points, unlocking the blessings that you want, getting a new tier of blessings, and repeating. The price of changing blessings and perks is pretty much entirely irrelevant, and so you can do that as much as you want without any worry, really. Some blessings drastically change how you play with a weapon, and so I'd give them all a look when trying something new. The gear score value can be increased through the Tech Priest when you get enough mastery, but honestly it barely matters in my experience. When you look at a weapon, it'll list a bunch of stats for that weapon with some percentages. You can ignore the first number, it barely matters, but that second one does. That's the max value you can get with that stat when the weapon is fully leveled up. There is 20 points of variation across all these different stats, as in all the stats combined can have up to 20 points below 80, the maximum. So you want to figure out which stat you don't care about, and then find a version of that weapon with 60 max, the lowest possible value, in that stat, as it will have 80 in every other stat that you actually care about. That's pretty much the best possible version of that weapon that you can get, after you turn it orange and apply the blessings that you want, of course. This entire system can be practically entirely ignored until you are max level. The difference between a low-level weapon and a high-level one is extremely minimal. The only thing that you really need to worry about is making sure that you have a decent blessing on the weapon that you want to use, and changing those out costs pretty much nothing. The worst part about this system is the interface. It's a lot of switching between different menus and running to different vendors who are annoyingly far apart from each other and the meat grinder. Going into the meat grinder and back out to test something really quick is a loading screen nightmare, so I have to recommend the mod Psych Ward, which isolates everything onto very convenient buttons on this screen, which saves so much load time. This mod alone has probably saved me a few hours of staring at the screen. On the topic of mods, I also recommend Enhanced Descriptions. Its color coding of different effects is really helpful for actually learning what is what, and all of the extra information that it gives is super useful. If you take anything away from this video, it's that you should use these two mods. Darktide is a numbers game, and it's helpful when you actually are told the relevant numbers and aren't left in the dark. Now I get that after all that boring number crunching, you're gonna want to go and hit things, but before you learn to smack, you must learn how to not be smacked. The game tells you how to block, but I can't really think of a situation outside Ogryn's shield where blocking is better than dodging back. At any time, if you're holding movement keys that aren't W, and press space, you dodge in the direction that you're holding. This doesn't mean that you can't dodge forward. You have a mouse, you can whip around and dodge in whatever direction that you want. You get some iframes, Ogryn knocks enemies over, and it can be done at any time, including when you're holding something or bracing a weapon. It looks totally ridiculous, but if you're bracing all the time, you gotta be doing this all the time too. You can also slide if you crouch while running, and even if you're slowed by charging a heavy attack or carrying an objective, sliding inexplicably gives you a sudden boost of speed because Darktide is actually a movement shooter. The children yearn for Titanfall. No iframes from slides, unfortunately, unless sliding through enemies to dodge their attacks counts. They do make that easy for you, as, thankfully, all of Darktide's enemies wind up their melee attacks for several weeks like they're from the lands between, so you'll have plenty of time to notice and then dodge. The telegraphs in this game are pretty well done and aren't trying to deceive you like the aforementioned game. Ranged weapons also all have telegraphs visually and audibly, though you'd be forgiven for not noticing given that every single brawl in this game makes me feel like the Among Us speedrunner guy. Here's what they look like. They're variations on a burst of light, though some are totally fucked. Like, the shotgunner seems to be broken, with the telegraph happening way before he actually fires. He actually has two telegraphs, the burst of light and then the shotgun pump, so I guess in this case the burst of light is a telegraph for a telegraph? Enemies with full auto weapons like gunners, reapers, and flamers are the only ranged weapons without a flash of light telegraph, but they still have to go into a firing position before they can let loose. As you can see, ranged attacks can also all be dodged. If you press dodge after the telegraph happens, they will not hit you. There's not really a timing element to it, and in fact, if you hold your dodge until right before they shoot, they'll probably actually hit you, especially when ping is a big factor. You have a window after the telegraph, but before they fire to dodge, and if you do, you're good. You can dodge the full auto enemies as well, but only a small burst at a time. Snipers become completely irrelevant after you learn how the telegraphs and dodging works, because they fire about once a week, their telegraph is about as subtle as the Warhammer franchise itself, and you're gonna know if they're aiming at you thanks to the laser. I must warn you though, the Trapper's telegraph is wrong. There's no visual telegraph other than them standing still, but the audio stinger is really loud. And I don't know why they did this, but there are two sounds to listen out for, which is them readying to fire and actually firing. The one for them getting ready to attack is supposed to be their gun spooling up, but it sounds a hell of a lot like someone firing a net. And so, obviously you dodge an instinct, then you don't have your dodge up for when they actually shoot half a second later, and you have been officially owned by the sound designer. When you hear the loud-ass sound that sounds like a net firing, that's when you're supposed to wait until it's done to dodge. Now you know. There are also audio telegraphs for the Bomber and Flamer, but they're so subtle that I have no idea how you're supposed to pick them out when Jesper Kid is blaring. The Flamer's is a ticking that makes me feel like my food is ready. And the Bomber's telegraph is a literal pin drop. Ain't no way that I'm hearing that in the middle of a fight. I can't hear anything! Every weapon has something special happen when you press whatever is bound to this keybind. It can be a single high AP hit, loading a unique round, or just a flashlight. If you're testing a weapon in the meat grinder and use its special only to find it has a punch, and are like, what the hell is the point of this? The punches have a high impact value and are so for stunning. That's a good segue into talking about all the stats that Darktide never explains, and there are many. Stagger, brittle, impact, rending, there are so many terms thrown around and none of them are clear or obvious, so I'm just gonna go through them one by one. Impact is an attack's ability to stagger an enemy. And no, that's not a joke, this is a separate stat from stagger, because God has left us. Brittle reduces how much the enemy's armor reduces your attack's damage. In other words, it's essentially a debuff that gives future attacks against the target armor piercing. Rending does the same thing, except it's explicitly for the attack that you're doing rather than a debuff applied to the target for future attacks. Suppression is pretty simple. When you shoot near someone, they'll sometimes play a little panic animation. It's usually better to shoot at someone rather than near them, which is why this mechanic is so hard to notice when you're not actively looking out for it. Target priority is something I barely need to even cover because the meat grinder actually does it for me. Every enemy in this clump here you want to focus first, then ragers, and then what you want to shoot at pretty much exactly follows how they're placed around in this big circle. There are some enemies missing from here though, namely poxbursters and bosses. Those are your real high priority targets, which means that I need to talk about poxbursters real quick. If you walk up to one and then bash it by holding right click and then left clicking, it'll get knocked down and then explode a couple of seconds later. But like, it's a walking bomb. The easiest way to get rid of it is to shoot it before it gets close to anyone. When 3 people go to light up a poxburster, the 4th one does not need to shove it. If you do enough damage to a poxburster but do not kill it, the exact same thing happens as if you shoved it down, and as a bonus, you don't have to walk towards the biological nitroglycerin. This isn't hard to do either. I have so many clips of it. If you go to shove a poxburster and your team blows it up, that is wholly on you. Dodge back and shoot the guy like a normal person. As for where they come from, enemies come from various doors and levels that lead to the Great Abyss. Apart from enemies that are placed throughout a level as you move through it, universally, enemies always spawn from and arrive through these doors. Enemies can also go back through them and teleport to any other door that they want, which is why stuff like this can happen. Essentially, you can think of all the doors as being one big connected Skaven tunnel that enemies hop around through in their attempts to kill you. When they do spawn in, by the way, they have this bizarre freeze period where they still can't act, something that's not hard to see when other enemies can still open the door when they're pondering life. This is important because you can attack through the doors, even if they're closed. If you walk up to a door and spam left click on it, you'll probably kill anything that spawns in before it can act, just hope it's not a poxburster. With that, I think that wraps up everything you could ever need to know about how to play this game. Oh, I should touch on mod skin real quick. I was using the weapon customization mod to make stuff like the Ogryn's cavalry saber, and this entire system is just already in Darktide's backend for some reason. That mod and the ones that I mentioned before, Psych Ward and the expanded descriptions, will be available below the like button. If there's something that I didn't get to that you think I should have included, you can of course feel free to tell me and the others who are reading those comments, and if there's a mechanic that you have a question about, Darktide's Games Lantern page is super helpful. The fandom wiki stinks, don't use it. One last thing, don't walk into the fan. Seriously, this is a little embarrassing, but yeah, it hurts. Thanks to my patrons, Emmy and Potato especially. Like, comment, subscribe, you know the drill, and comment on this damn video, making it took my entire adult life.